Long, long ago, in a forest filled with singing birds and whispering trees, there lived a tortoise. Now, this wasn't any ordinary tortoise. He was cunning, and his mind was sharp as the talons of an eagle. He believed he could outwit anyone, and he often did. One day, news spread through the forest. The birds were preparing for a grand feast in the sky, a celebration like no other. Word spread quickly from tree to tree, bush to bush, until it reached Tortoise. And oh, how his mouth watered at the thought of the delicious feast above. But there was one problem: Tortoise couldn't fly. He scratched his head, watching the birds soaring and chirping about the feast. Then, a sly grin crept onto his face. Why should I be left out? He thought. So, he called to his friends, the birds, and said, "My dear feathered friends, I have long admired your beauty and grace. Today, I wish to join you in your feast, to celebrate as one of you." The birds looked at each other, puzzled. A feast in the sky was no place for a tortoise. But Tortoise was clever, and he begged them sweetly, praising each one, until finally, the birds felt pity. "We will help you, Tortoise," they chirped. They each plucked a feather from their wings and gave it to him. Tortoise donned his new feathers, flapped his wings, and soon he was soaring, rising higher and higher until he joined the birds in the sky. He looked around at the cloud-laden table set for a feast. There were fruits so sweet they glittered, and dishes filled with honey and grains, enough to fill any belly for days. Tortoise could barely contain himself. But before the feast began, Tortoise stood tall and cleared his throat. "Ahem," he announced. "As I am your guest, it is only right that I choose a name. Today, you may call me all of you." The birds exchanged puzzled glances, but agreed to his request. As the feast began, the servers brought plate after plate, saying, "This is for all of you." But Tortoise, sly as ever, quickly gathered each plate for himself. "Ah, thank you, this is indeed for me," he would say. And he gobbled up every dish, every fruit, and every last morsel, while the birds watched in shock. There was nothing left for them. Finally, the feast was over, and the birds had barely tasted a thing. Furious and betrayed, they flew to him. "You tricked us, Tortoise. You took everything." But Tortoise only shrugged, a smug grin on his face. "It was meant for all of you, and that's the name I chose, remember?" Furious, the birds huddled together, whispering among themselves. They decided to teach Tortoise a lesson he would never forget. One by one, they took back their feathers, leaving him helpless in the sky. Tortoise watched as his wings fell away, and he began to plummet, spinning and tumbling through the clouds. He called out to his wife below, "Quickly, pile cushions outside our home, so I may land softly." But his wife, too, had heard of his tricks, and she placed only the hardest furniture she could find. With a great crash, Tortoise hit the ground, his shell shattering into pieces. From that day on, his shell was cracked and scarred, a reminder of his greed and trickery. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like and share to get more interesting folktales.